Now that we have the front end UI sending the file back to the Node.js app, let's continue working on the post route, the slash upload route that we created earlier, and let's receive the file back at the server end. I'm going to use a module called Formidable, which will make our life really easy when it comes to managing uploaded files. So let's go into the app.js, and we will actually require 3 modules. The first is the Node.js built-in file system module, that's called fs. So let's do a require fs, followed by the os module. This is also built into Node.js. You don't need to do an npm install on these. And then we will call the Formidable module. And this will require an npm install. So let's go to the terminal and let's do an npm install formidable --save. So once this installs, then we will also pass in references to the fs, os and formidable into our routes.js function. So let's pass in formidable, fs and os. Back in the routes.js, let's receive these references like so. Now in the upload route, let's start by creating a variable called new form, and we'll set this to a new instance of formidable dot incoming form. So formidable dot incoming form will receive the form that comes in, will receive the form data that comes in, and will process and will do the needful. Next, since we are receiving a file upload, we're going to set a property called keep extensions, and we'll set this to true. This will ensure that the extensions of the file that are being received will be preserved. Then I'm going to do a new form dot parse, and what this will do is it will look for the payload in the request object and will provide with 3 things: the error if there are any, the fields that are being received, and the references to the files that are being received. Now over here, what we need to do is we will need to create 3 variables, and these 3 variables would be created over here because we need access to these variables outside of the function. So let's call these 3 variables as temp file, new file or n file, and the file name. So the tmp file variable will contain the reference, the complete path to the file that is uploaded. The f name will be used to generate a new random file name, which we're going to use to store the files into the S3 bucket. And the n file will essentially contain the complete path to the new file. Okay, so just declare these variables for now, and in the new form dot parse, what we'll do is we'll set tmp file to files dot upload dot path, and this will essentially populate tmp file with the complete path to the file that has been received by Formidable. Next, what we'll do is we'll set f name, which is what we want the file name to be before we store into the S3 bucket, and we want to create a random file name. Now to create the random file name, I'm going to write a function. So let's actually create a function over here, and let's call this as generate file name. And what this will require is access to the name of the file. So let's call this as, let's just use the argument called file name. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable called ext underscore regex, and we're going to create a regular expression here which will simply extract the extension from the file name variable that we are passing in to the generate file name function. So let me just type in this regular expression. There you go. And once we have this, we will run this by doing a ext underscore regex dot exec or execute over the file name variable that we are passing into the function. And this will give us two parts of the file name itself and the extension. And we want to access the second property, which will have the index of 1. Okay, so index 0 will contain the file name, index 1 will contain the extension. So we just want the extension, and we are creating our own file name. Okay, so the first part that we do require is the extension. The next thing that I need is the current date. So I'm going to do a new date, and specifically we'll do a get time. So what the get time method does is it gets the number of milliseconds between the midnight of 1st January 1970 and the current date. Then we will create a character bank of all the alphabets. And since you can simply take a string and access it like an array, I'm going to create a new blank variable called fstring, set it to blank, and let's run a simple for loop which will run from 0 to 14. And what it does is it keeps appending from the variable char bank, which is treated like an array, a string array, and we simply take random numbers and multiply it with 26. Okay, so once this is done, what we simply do is we return a string which contains the f string appended by the time in milliseconds, which is in the variable called date, plus a dot followed by the extension. Okay, the extension that we had extracted earlier. So before I use this function, let me just copy this and test this out. So just simply go into Chrome, open the Chrome console, and let's just drag this over here. I'm going to paste this, press enter, and let's invoke the function and see what we get. So oops, so let's do a generate file name, and let's say the file name is called myphoto.jpg, and when we press enter, it returns this randomly generated file name. Okay, so let's just do this again, myphoto01, and we get a new randomly generated file name. So that's what the function is all about. It creates a randomly generated file name, and this is what will ensure that we get unique file names on the S3 bucket. So going back, now that we have this, the fname property, the fname variable, will simply invoke the generate file name and will pass in files.upload.name, and files.upload.name is the property which contains the name of the file that has been uploaded. So once I'm done with this, I will populate the n file variable with os.txt os.tmpdir. So os.tmpdir is where I'm simply using the os module to get access to the temporary directory on the server. So I may be running this app on a Windows machine, or I may be running this on a Linux machine or on a Mac. The OS module, which comes built into Node.js, will ensure that I get access to the temporary directory where all the files are stored once they're received back at the server end. So since we want to get access to the file, we want to get access to the complete path to the file, we will use os.tempdir, and we will append a / followed by the fname, that is the newly generated file name. Okay, so the TMP file contains the complete path to the file that has been uploaded. The fname contains a new randomly generated file name, and the n file contains a complete path to the newly generated file name. So what you need to understand here is that we have not renamed the file. The file has been received and has its own file name, but we need to rename the file, which we're going to do in a second. Two more things that I'm going to do is we're going to send back in the response 200, where the content type will be simply set to text/plain, and we want to end the response here. Now, when the file upload completes, okay, and how do you actually monitor for that is by using the new form variable, and we are looking for an event called end. So once the end happens, then what we need to do is we need to invoke the fs.rename. The fs.rename method will actually rename the file from its original upload name, so whatever the original upload name may be. Okay, so TMP file refers to the complete path to the file that has been uploaded in its original file name, and we want to rename this to the n file variable. So the n file contains the complete path and the file name, which we have just generated using the generate file name method. This will take a callback function, and once this rename is done, then we will proceed to resize the image, and we will upload this file into the S3 bucket. Okay, so just to recap, what we are doing here is in the /upload route, we are receiving the file using the Formidable module. We are then generating a new randomly created file name using the function that we just created. And once the file uploads completely, what we simply do is we rename the file using the fs module, the fs.rename method. And once the rename is done, then we will process the file before putting it in the S3 bucket.